disaster that's here. The other question is, what kind of response will Israel have? Last April, it was muted. Famously, President Biden said to Netanyahu, you've got to win, take a win. But I don't think Israel's going to take a win this time. I think they're going to respond somehow. So that will be the big question, what's going to happen after. And I see in the video there some of the interceptions or some of the missiles there coming over Israel right now.
Yeah, are you hearing anything in your area where you're at, or so at this point, or are you guys just sheltering in place?
We're sheltering in place. We're not hearing anything. Probably not close enough to maybe to hear even the sirens right now. I mean, we're down below here in Dan Panorama.
Gotcha. Yeah, and as you said, 102 missiles on their way. And like you said, different than last time, because last time it was those slow-moving drones, and so it was kind of like this, hurry up and wait, and it was almost seemed intentional that they maybe potentially, didn't want to go too far in that effort. But this time, it seems like they've really ramped it up, and reports of loud explosions of these interceptions are happening all over the country right now. When you look at the rocket alert map that Israel has there's an app when rockets are going off, which should tell you something about the threat Israel is always under. The fact that there's a rocket app that's in place that has to show you when this is happening. But like the whole country, or big portion of it, is lit up in rocket attack alerts. So this is definitely a massive ramp up from the last one.
Very much so, and I think I think central Israel, the southern Israel, was targeted as well, and obviously right here in Jerusalem, which is central Israel, and it does seem like a ramping up of what Iran did back in April. And again, as I said, the question will be what Israel's going to do. You can see, probably it's a little blurry, but people are just standing here on their on the shelter here and sheltering in place. As I said, there was a bus that stopped. I mean, literally, people were streaming out of the bus into the over here to the Dan Panorama Hotel, and this has been repeated. Several million people are doing what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, what are people? I'm just curious on. Obviously, unfortunately, Israelis have become accustomed to this sort of thing. Like, what's the general mood of the people that are in your vicinity there?
Well, let me ask this guy. He's here at the Dan Panorama Hotel. What's your name?
My name is Oded. Nice to meet you. I'm the duty manager.
He's the duty manager here at the Dan Panorama. Oded, what are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling okay. I'm trying to calm the people that we have down here at -1, which is considered to be 1 floor under the ground. And as I hear from the security guards around the hotel, that it keeps falling all the time, and we're hoping that to be quiet soon.
How would you describe the mood of Israelis right now?
Tense, I guess. Much of the people over here, and they came up a couple of times. They thought it's over, and we're keeping everyone down there to make sure that they're safe and sound.
Yeah. What do you think Israel should do to respond to this?
That I don't know. I'm sure there will be a response to that.
Yeah. But say, what is the procedure? When people hear a siren, what do they need to do?
So basically, when there are sirens and they're inside their rooms, our safe zone considered to be at their staircases between the floors, unless otherwise people who are around the lobby over here, so they're closer to that staircase that leads to -1, which is 1 floor under the ground, which is the safest spot in the hotel.
Yeah. How can people pray for Israel right now?
As they can pray.
Mm-hmm.
We need prayers.
Amen.
Yeah.
Oded, thank you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you. So that was Oded, the duty manager here, and explaining what the procedure is for the guests in the hotel and what they need to do. And it's not just the guests. Anybody in the vicinity, like I said, the bus stopped right outside the entrance. Probably 24 people ran in there. I was one of them. I stopped my car and I abandoned my quest to go get some spaghetti, and I thought it was better that shelter in place.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you're there. At least made it there before all the rockets and missiles are coming in. And this was from CENTCOM a little bit ago. 3 additional aircraft squadrons, an F-15E, an F-16, and an A-10 were arriving in the region. So obviously, this, as I mentioned at the top, was an anticipated potential move here by Iran. President Biden earlier saying, kind of warning, which is interesting because you have Biden telling Netanyahu, urging sort of a ceasefire in the north, right? But then when it comes to Iran, kind of the same thing, saying, hey, don't do this. And I mean, this is, Chris, I mean, we've been talking about this and the potential for escalation, and it doesn't seem like it's any more just sort of threats, right? Iran has been threatening for decades now to try to wipe Israel off the map. This we know, and now it really sure seems like we are getting closer and closer to where they're physically trying to do that.
Very much so, Dan. In fact, this would probably mark the second time since, and the first time being in April, that Iran has directly attacked Israel. And like I said, the last time the defense was Israel's going to mute any reaction. This time, there's been a sense, could this be the time when Israel does attack Iran's nuclear facilities? Is this an opportunity they have? I think that's been the speculation here in Israel. And I know a lot of Israelis would love to take the opportunity and to finally eliminate the most serious threat to Israel is Iran's nuclear program. They're right on the cusp of it. They have enough enriched uranium to go from 60 to 90%, perhaps in just under 2 weeks. So could this be the time? Like I said, the second time that Iran has attacked Israel directly, but it's things have changed dramatically since April, and dramatically in the last couple of weeks with the elimination of Hassan Nasrallah, with the pager attack, with the decimation of much of the rocket arsenal of Hezbollah. So we'll see what happens. And by the way, my battery's down to 10%, so if, stay on as long as I can. But if Oded might be my battery savior and get a charger.
There we go. Hopefully somebody can get you a charger there and keep you going. Chris, we talked just a couple days ago after Netanyahu's speech at the UN when he vowed to sort of vigorously defend, and they weren't going to just sit back and take this, and basically provided his justifications for what they are about to do and what they're doing in response to all these attacks that are coming their way. And so it certainly seems like he has the resolve, given what we're seeing in Lebanon and in northern Israel and into Lebanon right now, with them going on the ground there. It sure seems like this is a time for Israel and Netanyahu to they're not going to just sit back and take it. They are going to go on the offensive and say this is the time. And to your point about in that speech, he talked about how they had slowed down Iran's nuclear capabilities. And so to your point, if they felt the need to slow it down then, it sure seems like Iran is if they had a nuke in their hand, I don't see, given the actions we're seeing right now, any reason to believe they wouldn't use it.
Well, that's the danger, and that's the concern that Benjamin Netanyahu has in all of Israel. Would they, if they get it, will they use it? And but they don't want Iran to have to make that choice. They want to destroy it before they get that bad, and maybe this is that opportunity for them to go ahead and do that. This has been Netanyahu's raison d'etre, his life's mission to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And what else comes to mind is something called the Biden, no, not the Biden doctrine, the Begin doctrine, which was Menachem Begin said they will not allow any of their neighbors to get a weapon of mass destruction. And an Iranian nuclear bomb arsenal would be the worst, all possible scenarios. So maybe this is the time. We'll see. Iran is attacked the second time. We'll see what Israel's going to do in the next few minutes. I anticipate that they're prepared for this. They've had a long time to prepare for this, and maybe this is a scenario they feel like they could do what they've been working on and planning for many, many years.
Yeah, and as we saw with Operation Grim Beeper, as it's been dubbed, clearly they have preparations in place. They are not unprepared for these sorts of situations. And I would imagine that Israel has war gamed the Iran situation for quite some time now, because as we've said, that they've been threatening to wipe Israel off the map for a very, very long time. So I'm sure that they have war gamed this, and so they've probably got an operation in place that they feel would be best to help defend them against the threat that Iran poses here. So what do we know about, because this missile attack, Chris, had been sort of forecasted here, that it was a potential that they might do it. And they obviously have. If you're just joining us now, Iran has launched several ballistic missiles at Israel. Explosions are being reported as some of them are being intercepted. Chris Mitchell, our CBN Middle East Bureau Chief, is sheltering in place there in Israel. And, so Chris, we have, what's your sense as far as we've got this attack happening right now? Do we know if there's going to be more? Is there going to be more waves of this thing, or what do we know on that front? Or are the details scarce?
They're kind of scarce, but we do know that 102 missiles, and by the way, it looks like we've been released from,
there you go.
Here, the Dan Panorama Hotel here in Jerusalem. Everybody's leaving the shelter right now. We do know 102. That's the seen ballistic missiles that have been shot at Israel, but the fact that they may be faster, perhaps more or deadly or lethal than the ones that were back in April. And what you're going to see here is many of these people have just come in. Oded, do you have the charger?
I do.
Yeah.
Charlie, tell him I'm
Okay, Oded's going to help me with getting a charger so I don't run out of battery.
Excellent.
And, we're seeing dozens of people come in here to the lobby now.
Yeah, and we had
So
Chris.
as I said, to get a sense of this, Dan, this is really what Israelis are living in. They're literally, this scene has been repeated throughout Israel right now. Millions of people going into their shelters, in the bomb shelters. The people in the north of Israel have had this for almost a year. Going to their bomb shelters, living under the threat of Hezbollah rockets, more than 9,000. So this is life in Israel right now. So you can see some of the people here. Sorry, my background's a bit blurry, but not as many tourists here. There are some, but this is life in Israel right now, when running to a bomb shelter and then sheltering in place till they all clear.
Yeah, and Chris was planning, I know you're planning to go live a little bit later to discuss all of this and more. And so we will be seeing you back on here in a little bit once you're able to get your spaghetti and actually get back to where you were going. If you're just joining us, this is Dan Andros here, and we have breaking news of Iran launching a missile attack at Israel. This is the second one in several months. As we went live and reported on, it was that, if you remember, that slow-moving drone attack with hundreds of drones kind of slowly going across the sky, and then eventually most of them getting shot out of the air. These are a little different this time, ballistic missiles that are going much, much faster. Explosions reported over Israel, and at least 102 missiles had been launched. And so that's Chris Mitchell, our CBN Bureau Chief, who was on his way to getting his dinner. And like many Israelis, all of a sudden the sirens go off and they've got to shelter in place. So was just sheltering in place. They just released him moments ago, and the other people from being having to be in that shelter, and they're coming out now. And so that maybe, I don't know if that answers my question. Just the fact that they let you out of that, the fact that maybe the first wave was the first wave, and then there's a pause right now.
Yeah.
So we're still trying to get information on that.
Sure. I would say too, Dan, I think it's very important, and I've been getting some texts, there people are praying for me, or for others, for Israel. I think that's a great encouragement for people to pray for Israel right now, for its protection, for wisdom for the leaders to know exactly what they should do and how. So I think this is a really opportunity to pray on right in the moment that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you're just joining us, missile attack, Iran launching another attack at Israel, missiles launched from Iran to Israel. And according to a statement from the IDF, that's exactly what happened. And earlier, the U.S. had said that it believed Iran was preparing this ballistic missile attack. And Biden had actually made a statement saying not to do it. And they ended up doing it anyway. So I'm joined by CBN's Chris Mitchell, who's there in Israel. He was just sheltering in place. And also, I see we have CBN's George Thomas. And George, your reaction to what you're seeing right now play out. We talked about it last time when Israel had Iran had the slow-moving attack. Now this one's a little bit more ramped up. What's your reaction?
Yeah, as you guys have been discussing, we kind of got the telegraph alert about 2 hours ago. The United States, the White House, telecasting in essence that Iran was preparing this attack, similar to what we saw back in April. And as you guys mentioned, this came a lot more fast and furious. I think let's sort of take the assessment and make the assessment that this is Iran's response for the assassination of Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah, and that in a couple of hours this will all end, and nothing comes of it, and this is just a one-off event. However, we don't know the actual reporting, from inside Israel. I'm sure Chris can update us in the next few minutes as he gets relocated to see if any of these missiles actually caused civilian harm. If there are any people injured or killed, then that changes the calculus, because as Bibi Netanyahu said at the United Nations this week, as he gathered for the UN General Assembly, he said, if you target us, we will target you wherever you are. And so if there are casualties, we don't know that yet, if there are casualties, then I think we will see Israel respond. If this is, in essence, that the Israelis Israel's defense system was able to shoot down the majority of these missiles, then I think you don't see much of a response from Israel, and there's been a lot of pressure on Iran's new president, especially in the last 24-48 hours. We've seen demonstrations on the streets of Iran calling for the regime there to have some kind of a response to not only the invasion of Israel into Lebanon, but more importantly to some in the Iranian community, the assassination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. So there was a lot of pressure on Iran to respond, and like I said, this might be a response, and to placate and to ease the tensions inside the country. Remember, I think it's very, very interesting to the dynamics, Dan. Back in April, when Iran launched this massive attack, you also saw a tremendous show of force on the ground inside of Iran to try and quell any particular possible uprising and demonstrations against the Iranian regime, because this is a regime that knows they are on the edge, and their people are truly dissatisfied with the government, and I think what we have seen, with this attack, is potentially a response to Israel's assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, and then in the last day and a half, the invasion of Lebanon.
And I was going to ask you, George, that when we look at this amount, the 102 ballistic missiles, has the Iron Dome ever faced something like that? I mean, we know that they usually have, kind of a lot, even when it's a barrage from, say, Hamas out of Gaza previously, right? There, be a handful of rockets, maybe a few dozen rockets, and But I'm not. Are they the same types of rockets, or is this like a whole nother level and maybe a new test that the Iron Dome hasn't really faced before?
No, this is, I mean, Chris can chime in on this, but no, this is the first time. Again, keep in mind, this is the second time that Iran has launched a direct attack against Israel. My understanding, this is a whole different ballgame. I mean, what Hezbollah shoots out of Lebanese territory, or Hamas shoots out of the Gaza Strip, is obviously, it doesn't have to travel that far compared to being launched from inside Iranian territory. So my understanding is that this is the first time Israel has had to face such a barrage of attacks. I think it'll be interesting to see. We've seen some video of explosions of projectiles landing inside of Israel and exploding. I'd be curious to find out from the IDF. I think we'll find out in the next few hours whether those projectiles were as a result of Israel's missile defense system intercepting these missiles and then obviously them falling to the ground. I saw this quite often in Ukraine when Ukrainians would launch their defense system over Kyiv and Zaporizhia and some of the other major cities in order to protect themselves from incoming Russian missiles. And what would happen quite often in those cases is, as they are intercepted in the air, keep in mind these things have to fall. They have to fall somewhere. And in the case of Ukraine, they would fall in densely populated areas, in civilian areas, and would in essence obviously then cause casualty. I'll be interested to see if some of these explosions that we have seen on television through our various networks, news agencies, whether these explosions are in fact actual penetration through Israeli airspace, and that Israel's defense system weren't able to intercept, or if these are the results of Israel's Iron Dome or David Sling intercepting, and as a result, these projectiles are falling to the ground.
Yeah, Chris, your response to that discussion there on if the Iron Dome has faced something like this exactly before?
Well, there's a three-tiered system for Israel's anti-missile defense system. The first, the largest, is the Arrow anti-missile, and that can take out ballistic missiles outside the atmosphere. They also have David Sling, as George mentioned, and then the Iron Dome. So, yeah, I think they have faced this and they're prepared for this. So I think any one of those three-tiered systems can take out a number of different kinds of missiles, drones, UAVs, or rockets. So they're prepared for that, and I would expect. And as George said, it is dangerous because the debris falls, and the idea is that if you do go to a bomb shelter and say the Iron Dome knocks out a missile or rocket, you need to stay in place for at least 10 minutes, so allow the debris to fall down, and then it can be safe. That's why I'm sure everybody just left the bomb shelter over at the Dan Panorama, and you can see traffic starting to move again. So whether or not this was just one wave of 102 ballistic missiles remains to be seen. And we'll see, as you said, George, we'll see if there's any casualties. Tragically, literally just as the missiles were coming, there was a terror attack in Tel Aviv. At least 10 casualties. I saw some of the video. Obviously, some have already been killed during that terror attack. The terrorist has been killed as well. But even if there's no casualties from the missiles, it does remain to be seen how Israel will respond. They have said before the missile attack they were ready on defense and offensive capabilities, and whether or not they take this as an opportunity to strike Iran directly after the second time that Iran has directly attacked Israel, we'll see, and perhaps the next few hours or a couple of days.
Yeah.
All right, and hold on real quick here, George. The AP is reporting that Iran is now saying and taking responsibility, obviously, for firing these dozens of missiles into Israel, but saying it was as retaliation for the killing of Hezbollah leader of the Hezbollah leader Nasrallah and a Hamas official.
Yeah, I think, it's again, if you just look at what has happened in the last year and the growing frustration within the Hezbollah, within the Hamas camp, first of all, and then more recently in the last week within the Hezbollah camp, there are growing frustration that Iran, the head of the octopus, as we have been reporting for quite some time, the main actor in the region responsible for sowing all these hotspots of instability, that they did not come to first Hamas's side and help them out in the last almost 1 year as Israel was pummeling and decimating Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and then more recently in the last 2 weeks that again Iran has been silent, and there's been a lot of talk of within the Hezbollah leadership and on the streets of Lebanon. Why didn't Iran respond? Where have they been thus far? And then in the last 2 days, 3 days, we've seen the so-called Iranian street, those who support the regime, which again by no means is the majority of Iranians. We've been reporting on that for quite some time. That pressure was building. And again, I think the fact that Chris, my colleague, is out and back in the office, and the streets of there is traffic back on the streets of Jerusalem, is a good sign that this was in fact perhaps just a one-off, as a way to placate the sort of the pressure cooker within inside Iran against the regime. Again, keep in mind, this is a regime that is teetering. It literally is teetering, and I think they are feeling the pressure even more so. And I would say, Chris, you can back me up on this, or maybe push back on me. But I don't think in the last 44 years since the regime came to power that we have seen the potential of this regime, potentially collapsing, because their biggest asset in the region, close to Israel, is on the verge of being eliminated, and that's Hezbollah. They had all these rockets pointed at Israel, and the hope in the eyes of the mullahs in Iran was that Hezbollah, acting as their proxy, would keep the Jews at bay, so to speak, and not focus on Iran or even try to go after Iran militarily. Now that Hassan Nasrallah has been taken out and pretty much the entire cadre of the Hezbollah leadership eliminated, and now that the Israelis have boots on the ground in Lebanon, I think Ayatollah Khamenei and his clique are clearly very, very concerned that they could be next. And that's of serious concern to the regime.
Yeah. And real quick, Chris, before you go, Netanyahu spoke just yesterday, I believe, directly to the Iranian people and made an appeal to them, and talking about the potential, the future and where do you want to go, and kind of speaking to what you were saying there, George, about, maybe sensing the weakness there of the administration. Chris?
Yeah, he did. Just let me first of all add there, I think over 1,800 sirens that went off inside Israel here. And to George's point, I think the Iranian regime is very scared. We talked to an American Iranian born in Iran, and he said, maybe 95%, his estimate of how many people are disaffected and detest the Iranian regime. He made the point back in April when they attacked Israel the first time that they sent out their Bajil, the secret police, to suppress any sort of protest after that. And I think another thing that's very telling is something that Benjamin Netanyahu did yesterday. He spoke directly to the Iranian people, and he said, why do you don't want to continue with this regime, and they're leading you to poverty and despair? And we want to bring prosperity. We want to bring hope, a whole brand new future to to Iran, and that was really telling that he would speak not to the regime, but to the people themselves. And we'll see. I don't think, based on what we have heard or seen, that they had the people have the wherewithal to go ahead and overthrow the government. But certainly, if there was an Israeli attack that destabilized the government, that knocked out maybe their oil facilities, their main source of revenue, or their nuclear facilities, the main deterrent that they've been trying to get for decades, could that be a tipping point in the future of Iran?
I was going to say, guys, also, I think, Chris, you can chime in here as well, but I really think that we're at this point where the potential of the regime in Iran either collapsing or being eliminated by Israel is very, very real, unlike ever before. And I think the pressure you can sense, at least from Bibi Netanyahu, his speech at the UN, his address to the Iranian people yesterday, the military achievements that the IDF and the Israeli Air Force have been racking up since October 7th have been very, very impressive. And I think, there is a sense, at least from what I've been reading and the analysis I've been reading and hearing from people inside the country, that the potential of Israel going directly after the regime in Iran, as you mentioned, either targeting their oil facilities, or more importantly, because I think, the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, has made it very clear, and this is also being backed up by the White House and our Western partners, that that Iran is potentially 2 weeks away from a nuclear bomb, or having the capability to put one of these things on a warhead. And Israel has made it very, very clear. Netanyahu made it very clear at the UN that is never going to happen. And so the potential of Israel now having the space, the geographical space, with Hezbollah on the ropes, the geographical space to go directly against Iran. And I think we saw that they have the capability, based on just the attack they made against the Houthis in the last 72 hours. Huge explosions against their oil facilities there on the coast. Again, just showing to Iran, principally Iran, that you are potentially in the crosshairs, and Israel going after their nuclear facilities is very, very much on the table. I remember, Chris, Pat Robertson, the late Dr. Pat Robertson, asking you quite often over the last 10, 15 years, Chris, when is Israel going to attack? Chris, when is Israel going to attack? Well, I think we're a lot closer today than we've ever been before.
I think so too, George. And there's a couple of clues I think that the IDF gave. And when they attacked the Houthis, they made the point, we can attack anybody, and no matter the distance. And if you look at the distance, it's a little bit further to go down and attack the Houthis than it is to attack Iran, at least some of the nuclear or oil facilities. And that was a veiled reference to exactly what they could do against Iran. And the calculus has changed a lot since April, when Israel was first attacked by Iran. And I'm not so sure Israel feels as restrained as it did back then. And maybe this is the time they feel they have the reason to go ahead and do that. Iran has attacked us with ballistic missiles, sending millions of our citizens to bomb shelters. Well, we can go ahead. We have the ability and the responsibility to eliminate, the major threat, the biggest threat to the state of Israel that's out there right now, an Iranian nuclear bomb.
Yeah, and to the point that Netanyahu made at the UN, talking about, well, what would the U.S. do if all these cities were being attacked and constantly attacked, and the entire city of San Diego had to flee and head out, of course the United States would respond with vigor, and we wouldn't allow it. And I think most countries, as long as they were capable, wouldn't allow it. So it's always that interesting double standard that Israel, when they are faced with these threats, and it's quite obvious from looking at the situation on the ground that the threats against them have been ramped up dramatically since October 7th. So a couple other things going on right now at this hour, guys. The Israeli Security Cabinet, they're reportedly in an emergency bunker in Jerusalem, getting ready to work on their response to this. And then from the White House, President Biden and Vice President Harris are saying that they're monitoring the Iranian attack against Israel from the White House Situation Room and receiving regular updates from their national security team. President Biden directed the U.S. military to aid Israel's defense against Iranian attacks and shoot down missiles that are targeting Israel. I mentioned a little while ago that earlier today they had already sent, the United States had already sent over some jets, some fighter jets into the region to help aid here. So what do you guys see as the United States response going forward from this point on?
Well, one thing I'm just saying is that the U.S., just on one of these Telegram feeds, is asking the U.S., Israel not to respond. We'll see. We'll see. As I said, things are different since last April. And I think Israel has had such a string of victories against Hezbollah and a long 11th-month slog against Hamas. And maybe they feel this is the time. So maybe what the White House says is not to be, they're not going to necessarily take that advice this time.
Yeah. Dan, I was going to say, if, for example, if some of these missiles did penetrate Israeli airspace, and if there have been some casualties in the process, I think, Chris, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I think this gives Israel the sort of the bigger green light to say, you know what, this is an all-out war. This is an all-out war because I think, in some ways, Netanyahu has been trying to make the case, since October 7th, the constant narrative that this is all being backed and funded and supported by Iran. But now you have the second time Israel being attacked in what is the largest ballistic missile attack on the Jewish nation ever of this scale. I think that it gives Netanyahu the sort of the green light and makes the case not just to the Israeli people but to the global community that he has to go after Israel, to go after Iran, and that this warrants a very, very forceful response, and that could potentially lead to a full-scale war between these two countries. Chris?
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think there's not only their nuclear facilities, but their oil facilities as well are very vulnerable. You saw what Israel did with the Houthis oil depots down in two of their ports.